In the old gardening books, the ones with the faded covers and brittle, yellowed pages, they say the best organic pest control is a tincture of cayenne pepper. It's a natural irritant. It doesn't kill, not directly. It simply makes the environment so unbearable that the unwelcome creatures, the aphids, the spider mites, the slugs that devour the tender leaves of the hostas, have no choice but to flee. I've always preferred organic methods. Gentle, but firm. The wail of the sirens is fading now, a mournful cry bleeding into the humid Connecticut night. Inside, the chaos is a politer, more focused sort. The paramedics speak in clipped, urgent tones, their boots squeaking on my immaculate hardwood floors. I stand at the kitchen sink, the cool porcelain a steady presence against my hips, and slowly dry my hands on a linen towel embroidered with a simple V. From here, I can see the hallway. I can see them wheeling out the first stretcher. A man's shape under a white sheet, his hand dangling over the side, fingers curled into a fist of agony. That's Richard. My husband of 50 years. He is groaning, a low, guttural sound that has nothing to do with the charm he usually reserves for the public. Then comes the second stretcher. A woman. She's trying to preserve some dignity, clutching the sheet to her chin, but her face is contorted, flushed a painful, blotchy red. That's Brenda Larson. His business associate. One of the younger paramedics glances at me, his eyes a mixture of confusion and professional concern. I offer him a small, tight smile, the kind one gives the gardener when he's tracked a bit of mud into the foyer. He quickly looks away. Richard always said I was predictable. Eleanor, with her roses, her book club, her perfectly timed dinner parties. A creature of habit and quiet tastes. He thought he knew every corner of the garden he had so carefully cultivated around me. I fold the towel and place it neatly on the marble countertop. I suppose, tonight, I finally surprised him. The front door clicks shut, and the silence that descends upon the house is heavier than any sound that came before it. It's a physical weight, pressing down on the antiques, settling into the thick pile of the oriental rugs. For the first time in hours, the house is mine again. The air, however, is a battleground of scents, the sharp, sterile smell of antiseptic warring with the sweet, heady ghost of the David Austin roses blooming just outside the open window. The roses are losing. I walk from the kitchen into the living room, my sensible orthopedic shoes making no sound. Everything is in its place. The porcelain shepherdess on the mantelpiece, the collection of silver-framed photographs on the grand piano, the leather-bound books that no one has ever opened. It's a museum of a life, and I am its quiet, stoic curator. The doorbell chimes, a soft, melodic sound that is utterly incongruous with the evening's events. I knew he would come. When I open the door, Detective Miller looks exactly as I expected. A man in his 50s, with tired eyes and a brown suit that has seen better decades. He isn't from our town's cozy little police force. His car, a plain, unmarked sedan, tells me he's from the county. This is no longer a simple domestic disturbance. Mrs. Vance? His voice is low, gravelly. He holds up his badge as a formality. Yes. Please, come in, detective. He steps inside, his gaze sweeping the room, missing nothing. He's not looking for evidence, he's reading the room, reading me. He sees the order, the oppressive cleanliness. He sees the woman in the simple silk blouse and gray slacks who looks more like she's about to host a bridge game than be at the center of a 911 call involving intimate lubricants and weaponized spice. I understand this must be a difficult evening for you, he begins, declining my offer of a seat. He prefers to stand, to maintain a subtle authority. It has been eventful, I reply, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. Your husband, Richard Vance, and a Ms. Brenda Larson have been taken to Stamford Hospital. They're being treated for severe chemical burns. The paramedics on the scene said the source of the irritant was a personal lubricant. He says the words carefully, clinically, watching for a flicker of emotion on my face. A blush, a tear, a tremor of the hand. I give him nothing. Yes, I say. A terrible, terrible accident. An accident, he repeats. It's not a question. It's a stone he's dropped into a well, and he's listening for the splash. I've taken up making my own remedies recently, I explain, my voice even and calm. The story I prepared unfolds as smoothly as a bolt of fine silk. Herbal infusions, things of that nature. For my arthritis. A friend gave me a recipe for a topical pain relief salve. It's quite effective, but the primary ingredient is a very potent cayenne pepper extract. I must have been decanting it this afternoon. The jar, it looks so similar to the other one. I gesture vaguely toward the upstairs. Richard has his own needs. I don't pry. I must have placed the wrong jar on his nightstand. A foolish, tragic mistake. Detective Miller remains silent for a long moment. His eyes are intelligent. They don't believe me. He knows the statistical improbability of such a mistake. He knows the sublime, almost poetic justice of the scenario. A wife, a cheating husband, a lover, and a punishment so bizarrely intimate it could only have been conceived from a place of deep, personal knowledge. The jars, Mrs. Vance. Where are they? I'm afraid in the commotion, they were knocked over and shattered. I cleaned up the glass. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. The lie is an extension of the first, a necessary branch on a growing tree. He jots something down in a small, worn notebook. We'll need to talk to your husband once he's able to speak. And Ms. Larson. Of course, I say. I would expect nothing less. He walks to the door, then pauses, his hand on the knob. Your garden is beautiful, Mrs. Vance. I noticed the roses when I pulled up. Thank you, Detective. They require a great deal of care. You have to be vigilant. Prune the dead wood. Watch for pests. Our eyes meet. In that moment, a silent, clear understanding passes between us. He knows. And he knows that I know he knows. But knowledge is not evidence. The law has its rules, its own rigid kind of garden path. Without a confession, without a witness, he is only the story of a confused old woman and a tragic mix-up. You take care of yourself, Mrs. Vance, he says, and then he is gone. The door clicks shut for a second time. The silence returns, but its quality has changed. It is no longer heavy and oppressive. It is light. Expansive. It is the silence of a chessboard after the queen has made a move no one saw coming. I walk to the large bay window overlooking the backyard. My garden. A perfect, manicured space of color and order. For 50 years, I have tended it. I have cultivated beauty while a rot grew silently in the roots of my own house. A tremor starts in my hand, a faint vibration. It is not fear. It is not regret. It's adrenaline, a current of life so potent I had forgotten it existed. I press my palm against the cool glass of the window, steadying myself. The woman staring back at me in the reflection is a stranger. Her eyes are not the soft, placid eyes of Eleanor Vance, the wife, the mother, the hostess. They are clear and cold and frighteningly calm. For 50 years, I had been a carefully tended plant in Richard's world. Tonight, I had finally taken up the pruning shears myself. The dead wood was cut away. And I was not afraid to see what would grow in its place. The morning light is unforgiving. It streams through the east-facing windows, illuminating every speck of dust dancing in the air, a silent testament to the night's disruption. I sit at the polished mahogany dining table with a cup of black tea. The porcelain is bone china, delicate and cool to the touch. I've owned this set for 40 years. It has survived countless dinner parties, 2 clumsy teenage grandsons, and 1 earthquake tremor in '02. It is a symbol of resilience, of carefully maintained perfection. Just like me. The phone begins its assault at precisely 8:15. The first call is from Margaret Stillwater, from the Garden Club. Eleanor, darling. I just heard the most dreadful rumor. Something about an ambulance at your house last night? I do hope everything is all right. Her voice is a viscous liquid, dripping with feigned concern that barely conceals a ravenous appetite for gossip. The women in this town are like crows, they circle at the first sign of carrion, their beaks sharp and ready. Margaret, how kind of you to call, I say, my voice is smooth and placid as a summer pond. Just a bit of a scare. Richard had a severe allergic reaction to something. You know how it is. We're not as young as we used to be. Oh, you poor dear. An allergic reaction? To what? We're not quite sure. The doctors are running tests. Thank you so much for your concern. I end the call before she can peck for more details. The next call is from the wife of Richard's former law partner. The next, from the head of the Historical Society. The script is the same. I am polite, vague, and unshakable. I am the porcelain wife, displaying no cracks, no chips, no sign of the inferno that blazed through my home just hours before. They hang up disappointed, armed with no new information to trade at the country club luncheon. With each call, a cold clarity settles deeper into my bones. What I did last night. I had thought of it as an act of passion. A moment of glorious, liberating madness. The culmination of 1,000 small betrayals, 1,000 swallowed insults. But it was more than that. It wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Yesterday, the pepper was about humiliation. A petty, visceral act meant to mark two bodies with the same searing shame I had felt internally for years. Today, I see it for what it truly was, a declaration of war. And a good general never enters a battle without understanding the terrain. After the fifth call, I leave the phone off the hook and walk toward the back of the house, to the one room that was never truly mine. Richard's office. It was his sanctuary, his fortress. The door, solid oak, was almost always closed. The few times I had entered, it was by invitation only, to bring him a drink or a document. The room smelled of him, of old leather, expensive cologne, and the faint, acidic scent of secrets. Today, the door is slightly ajar. I push it open. The room is dark, the heavy velvet curtains drawn shut. I pull them aside, and the same unforgiving morning light floods the space. It illuminates a world of masculine order. A massive mahogany desk, walls lined with law degrees and photographs of Richard shaking hands with governors and local celebrities. There is a photograph of me and our son, Michael, on the corner of the desk, but we are turned slightly away, as if we are spectators to the main event of his life. I came in here looking for an answer to a simple question, why? Not why the affair. I was not that naive. There had been others over the years, discreet and fleeting. I had learned to live with them, to treat them like weeds in the far corner of my garden, unpleasant, but not a threat to the overall landscape. But Brenda was different. She was brazen. For the past year, their carelessness had become a public insult. Why had he gotten so sloppy? So reckless? I am not looking for love letters. I am not looking for another woman's perfume on a stray handkerchief. I am looking for the logic behind the collapse. I run my fingers along the smooth, cool surface of his desk. It's locked, of course. It always is. But Richard, in his arrogance, keeps the key in the small, carved wooden box on the bookshelf, the one he brought back from a trip to Japan. He thinks I don't know. There is so much he thinks I don't know. The key turns with a satisfying click. The top drawer is neat. Pens, stationery, checkbooks. The second drawer holds files, organized alphabetically. I ignore them. I go for the bottom right drawer, the deep one, the one that is always out of sight. It's where a man keeps the things he doesn't want the world, or his wife, to see. It isn't a box of mementos. It isn't a stash of illicit photographs. It's a thick stack of papers held together by a rubber band. I lift them out. They feel cold, heavy. The first document is a credit card statement. American Express Platinum. The balance is over $90,000. Charges for hotels in the city I never visited, for jewelry from stores I never entered, for dinners at restaurants that cost more than our first car. The next is a letter from a private lender. A second mortgage on our home, taken out 6 months ago. The amount is staggering. Beneath that, a series of letters from the town tax assessor, each more threatening than the last. Final notice, delinquent property taxes. I feel a strange detachment, as if I am an archaeologist examining the artifacts of a dead civilization. The civilization of my marriage. Each piece of paper is a shard of pottery, telling a story of decay and ruin. And then I see it. At the very bottom of the pile. An official-looking envelope from a law firm I don't recognize. My hands tremble slightly as I pull out the single sheet of paper inside. The letterhead is stark, the type cold and impersonal. It is a notice of default and intent to foreclose. The words seem to float off the page. Our house. This house. The one we built together, the one where I raised my son, the one where I hosted decades of Christmases and birthdays. The anchor of my entire life. According to this letter, it was no longer ours. The bank was scheduled to take possession in 30 days. The affair, the humiliation, the lies, they were all just symptoms. The disease was this. A complete, catastrophic financial implosion that he had hidden from me, from everyone. He wasn't just squandering our money, he had already squandered it all. The charming, successful Richard Vance, the pillar of the community, was a fraud. A king ruling over a bankrupt kingdom. I sink into his expensive leather chair, the one that always seemed to swallow me. The smell of his cologne feels suffocating now. He hadn't grown reckless with his affair out of passion for Brenda. He had grown desperate. The expensive gifts, the public displays, it was all a frantic, final performance, a desperate attempt to maintain the porcelain mask of success while the world crumbled beneath his feet. He hadn't just betrayed me with another woman. He had betrayed our entire life. Every memory contained within these walls was built on a foundation of lies that was now collapsing. And me? I was the curator of a museum that was about to be repossessed. The cold clarity from earlier hardens into something else. Something solid and unyielding, like granite. The cayenne pepper was for the cheating husband. But this? This was for the man who had tried to burn down my world and leave me standing in the ashes. This changes everything. The pests were not just in the bedroom. They were in the very foundation of the house. And I had a whole new garden to weed. There's a flower in my garden, an oleander, that I keep in a secluded corner behind the old stone wall. It's beautiful, with lush, pink blossoms that bloom even in the harshest summer heat. It's also one of the most poisonous plants in the world. A single leaf, if ingested, can stop a man's heart. Richard always hated it. He said it was morbid. I always found it honest. Some things are beautiful and deadly all at once. You just have to know what you're dealing with. I decide to visit Brenda Larson. It's not an act of jealousy. Jealousy is a hot, messy emotion, and I am done with those. This is a strategic move. A reconnaissance mission. If I am going to dismantle the life Richard built on lies, I need to understand all of its architecture, and she is a key support beam. Her address is on one of the credit card statements from Richard's drawer. A condominium complex on the other side of Stamford, one of those new, soulless buildings with names like the Summit or the Pinnacle, designed to make transient people feel important. I drive myself. I haven't driven in years. Richard always insisted on a driver, another prop in his stage play of affluence. My hands feel strange on the wheel of the old Volvo we keep in the third bay of the garage. It's a solid, practical car, a relic from a time when our lives were perhaps more honest. Brenda's apartment is on the 4th floor. The hallway smells of stale air freshener and takeout food. When she opens the door, she is not the picture of a pampered mistress. She's wearing cheap-looking gray sweatpants and a faded t-shirt. There are no fresh burns on her face, but the skin around her eyes and on her neck is an angry, mottled pink, like a severe sunburn. She looks tired and stripped down, the expensive veneer Richard had paid for now peeled away. She stares at me, her mouth falling open. For a moment, she looks like she might slam the door in my face. Then, a different emotion takes over, a weary, bitter curiosity. "Eleanor," she says, her voice raspy. "What the hell do you want?" "I'd like to talk, Brenda," I say calmly. "May I come in?" She hesitates, then gives a short, mirthless laugh and steps aside. "Why not?" "It's not like the landlord can kick me out twice." The apartment is small and depressingly generic. The furniture looks like it was purchased as a set. There are boxes in the corner, some taped up, others gaping open. She's moving. Or being moved. "I see you're packing," I observe, my voice neutral. "I have a week before they change the locks," she says, crossing her arms over her chest. The gesture is defensive, but her shoulders are slumped in defeat. Richard was always so good at paying the bills. Until he wasn't. She sinks onto the beige sofa, wincing as the fabric rubs against her irritated skin. "So? Are you here to gloat? To throw holy water on me? What's the plan, Eleanor?" I remain standing, a few feet away. I am not her friend, and I am not her enemy. I am a woman with a shared problem. "I found the foreclosure notice for my house this morning," I say, getting straight to the point. There is no need for pleasantries. We are long past that. Her head snaps up. The bitter amusement in her eyes is replaced by a flicker of genuine surprise, and then, something akin to pity. "Oh. So you know." "I know that the life I thought I had is gone," I reply. "I know that my husband is not the man I thought he was. What I don't know is the extent of it." "You were not just his mistress, were you, Brenda? Your name is on some of the loan documents. You were his business partner." She looks away, staring at a water stain on the ceiling. "Partner," she scoffs. "That's a generous word. I was his facilitator. When the banks stopped lending to him, I used my credit, my name, to secure funds. He promised me a percentage of his new development project. He said it was a sure thing. He said it would set us both up for life. And was it?" She lets out a hollow laugh. The new development project was a fantasy. It was a Ponzi scheme designed to pay off the interest on his old debts. He was just moving money around, robbing Peter to pay Paul, buying himself another week, another month of pretending he was still Richard Vance, the king of Connecticut real estate. So, I was right. He was drowning. And he had pulled her under with him. She wasn't a victor in this story, she was just collateral damage. A different kind of victim, but a victim nonetheless. "He told me you didn't know anything," she says, her voice softer now, almost conversational. "He said you were fragile. That the truth about the money would destroy you. He said he was protecting you." The words are meant to be a comfort, perhaps. An explanation. But they land like a slap. Fragile. I, who had raised a son, buried my parents, managed a household that ran with the precision of a Swiss watch, was fragile. It was the ultimate insult. The cage he had built for me wasn't just made of money and lies, it was made of his condescending perception of my weakness. He underestimated me, I say, the words as cold and hard as river stones. And it seems he underestimated you, too. She finally looks at me, really looks at me. The animosity between us, the raw wound of wife and mistress, is still there, but it's overshadowed by a new, reluctant alliance. The shared experience of being utterly duped by the same man. "You have no idea," she whispers. Her eyes are dark with a fear that goes beyond eviction notices and bad credit scores. "This isn't just about debt, Eleanor. There are dangerous people he borrowed from. People who don't send polite letters from law firms." She pauses, rubbing her temples. He was terrified. Always looking over his shoulder. He kept talking about the old days. About the West End deal. He said if that ever came out, it would all be over. The West End deal? I ask. The name sounds vaguely familiar, a ghost from a long-ago dinner party conversation. It was his first major project, the one that launched his career 40 years ago. I don't know the details, Brenda says, shaking her head. Just that it was the foundation of everything. And he always said it was a foundation he couldn't afford to have anyone inspect too closely. I stand there, processing this new piece of information. The foreclosure, the affairs, the mountain of debt, that was the present disaster. But the West End deal, that sounded like the original sin. The first crack in the foundation. The place where the rot began. I look at Brenda, a woman I had every reason to hate, and I see not a rival, but a map. A map that might lead me to the truth. She is ruined, angry, and has nothing left to lose. She is, in her own way, as dangerous as an oleander. And I know exactly how to use her. Brenda, I say, my tone shifting from inquisitive to commanding. I'm going to find out what happened with the West End deal. And you're going to help me. It's not a request. It's a statement of fact. She stares at me, this fragile old woman in her sensible shoes, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine fear, or maybe respect, enters her eyes. She is starting to understand who she is dealing with. We both are. Bad news travels faster than gossip in a small town. It travels at the speed of light, carried on the invisible currents of the internet. The story of Richard's accident had mutated online, twisting from a domestic mishap into a sordid local scandal. Someone at the hospital must have talked. The narrative was simple and salacious: prominent local developer, mistress, enraged wife, emergency room. My carefully constructed story of an allergic reaction had been shredded. The fallout arrived in a rented black sedan 2 days later. Michael. He stands on my doorstep, looking windswept and angry, still wearing the rumpled suit he must have flown in. At 45, he has Richard's height and sharp jawline, but my eyes are observant and right now, deeply disappointed. Mother. He doesn't hug me. He walks past me into the foyer, dropping his briefcase with a thud that echoes the one in my chest. What have you done? His tone is not one of concern for my well-being. It is the tone of a man whose carefully ordered world has been thrown into chaos. Michael is an architect in Chicago. He builds gleaming, sterile towers of glass and steel, structures with no room for messy human emotions. He has spent his entire adult life distancing himself from our family's provincial drama, and I have just dragged him back into the heart of it. Michael, I didn't expect you, I say, closing the door. Of course you didn't, he snaps, turning to face me. His face is a mask of frustration. I had to hear about it from a partner at my firm. He forwarded me a link to the Stamford Advocate blog. A blog, mother. My father is a local punchline, and you're a meme. They're calling you the Cayenne Queen. How could you humiliate us like this? Us. He says us, but he means me. He means the potential embarrassment in front of his sophisticated Chicago colleagues. He sees the public shame, the vulgarity of it all. He doesn't see the 50 years of quiet indignity that led to that moment. He sees the fire, but he has no idea how long the kindling had been laid. Your father humiliated me, I say, my voice dangerously quiet. I simply returned the favor. With interest. This isn't a game. This is our family's reputation. Everything Dad built. What he built, I interrupt, was a house of cards. And the wind has started to blow. I walk past him, into the dining room, and gesture to the mahogany table. It's covered in the papers I took from Richard's office. The credit card statements, the loan agreements, the letters from collections agencies. The centerpiece of this macabre arrangement is the foreclosure notice. Michael follows me, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. What is all this? This is what your father built, I say. This is the truth. Sit down, Michael. For the first time in his adult life, he does as he's told without argument. He pulls out a chair and stares at the paper apocalypse I've spread before him. He picks up the foreclosure notice first. I watch his face as he reads it. I see the confident anger drain away, replaced by a slack-jawed disbelief. He reads it again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less catastrophic. He shuffles through the other papers, his movements quick and agitated. The architect in him is assessing the structural failure, trying to understand the impossible physics of a total collapse. This can't be right, he mutters, shaking his head. He's careful. He's meticulous. He was meticulous about his lies, I correct him. He was meticulous about his performance. The money is gone, Michael. All of it. The house, the stocks, your trust fund, it's all just paper covering a massive hole of debt. I don't tell him about Brenda's deeper fears, about the dangerous men or the mystery of the West End deal. Not yet. He isn't ready. Right now, he is a son watching the monumental statue of his father crumble into dust before his eyes. It's a traumatic thing to witness. I give him a moment of silence to process the ruin. He slumps back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. The anger is gone, replaced by a hollowed-out look I recognize from my own reflection. Why didn't you tell me, he asks, his voice barely a whisper. Why didn't you leave him? It's the question I have asked myself 1,000 times. The question every woman in my position is asked. The answer is too complex for a single sentence. It's a tapestry woven from threads of love, dependency, fear, habit, and a stubborn, foolish hope that things might one day change. Because leaving was his story, not mine, I say, more to myself than to him. He wanted me to be the broken, abandoned wife. The victim. I decided to write a different ending. I pause, then look him directly in the eye. And because a part of me was protecting you. I wanted you to have a father you could admire, even if he was a fiction I helped create. The words hang in the air between us. For the first time, he isn't looking at me as his embarrassing, provincial mother. He's looking at a woman he doesn't know at all. He sees the steel that had been hidden beneath layers of soft cashmere for all these years. He sees a survivor, not a victim. A seed of doubt has been planted. Not just about his father's finances, but about his father's character. About the very foundation of the family he thought he knew. He's an architect. He understands foundations. And he's just realized that the one he's been standing on his entire life is made of sand. The West End deal, I say, my voice steady. Brenda, Ms. Larson, mentioned it. She said your father was terrified of it ever coming to light. It was his first big project. Do you know anything about it? Michael looks up, his eyes focusing, the architect's mind kicking into gear, grateful for a problem he can analyze rather than an emotion he must feel. The West End? That was 40 years ago. It made his career. He built that luxury apartment complex on the old industrial waterfront. Why? I think, I say, stacking the papers into a neat, damning pile, it's time we did a little demolition of our own. The city archives are housed in the basement of the old town hall, a place that smells of decaying paper and forgotten history. It's a crypt of civic life, where every birth, death, property sale, and legal dispute is laid to rest in a manila folder. For 2 days, this becomes our office. Michael, initially hesitant, is now consumed. The abstract shock of his father's financial ruin has been replaced by the concrete, solvable problem of a 40-year-old real estate transaction. This is his world: blueprints, deeds, zoning variances. He navigates the labyrinthine system of public records with a professional ease that is both impressive and, for me, a little sad. This is the brilliant, focused man he became when he was far away from us. Everything on the surface looks clean. he says on the second afternoon, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet, cavernous room. He has a massive, brittle zoning map spread out on the table, its pages cracked along the folds. The land was a patchwork of old warehouses and derelict lots. Dad and his partner bought them up one by one. Standard practice. His partner, I say. I'd almost forgotten he had one back then. Arthur Hobbs. The name feels like a ghost on my tongue. I remember Arthur. A quiet, gentle man with kind eyes and a nervous habit of polishing his glasses. He was the technical one, the engineer who understood soil composition and load-bearing walls. Richard was the face, the salesman, the charmer who wooed the city council and schmoozed investors. They were a perfect pair. And then, one day, Arthur was just gone. According to the record of sale, Arthur Hobbs sold his full 50% share in the West End Project Partnership to Dad for $10,000, Michael reads from a brittle, typewritten document. He looks up at me, his brow furrowed. 10,000. Mother, even in 1982, that land was worth millions. The zoning approval had just come through. It makes no sense. Why would he sell his winning lottery ticket for the price of a used car? Richard told everyone that Arthur lost his nerve, I recall, the long-dormant memory surfacing. He said Arthur was risk-averse, that he wanted out before the real construction began. He said he took the money and moved his family out west. Arizona, I think. Said he wanted a quieter life. It was a plausible story. Arthur was a quiet man. Richard was not. We all accepted it. It was easier to believe in Richard's boldness than to question Arthur's sudden disappearance. There's no forwarding address, Michael says, sifting through more papers. No record of a property sale for his own home here in town. It's like he and his family just vanished. He stops, holding up a thin folder. Wait a minute. This is odd. The final transfer of deed was signed by a proxy. Arthur Hobbs wasn't even there. It was notarized by a man named Sidlow. Sidlow, I repeat. Walter Sidlow. He was Richard's first lawyer. A dreadful, sweaty man. He died years ago. Well, Mr. Sidlow was busy, Michael says, his voice tight with suspicion. He also notarized two other key documents, a zoning variance appeal and a revised environmental impact report. The original report, filed by Arthur, cited concerns about soil contamination from the old tanneries. He pulls out another document. This revised report, filed by Dad 2 weeks after Arthur left, dismisses those concerns as negligible. It's what greenlit the final construction permits. I sit down on one of the hard wooden chairs, the musty air suddenly feeling thin and cold. A picture is beginning to form, a ghostly image developing in a darkroom. Arthur, the cautious engineer, finds a problem, a potentially expensive, project-killing problem. Richard, the ambitious dealmaker, wants to push forward. An argument. A partnership dissolving. But this is more than a disagreement. This is an erasure. Michael, I say, my voice low. Find Arthur Hobbs. Or find his family. The search moves from the dusty archives to the bright, sterile world of the internet. Michael is relentless, cross-referencing public records, social security databases, and old phone directories. The name Arthur Hobbs yields nothing. It's a dead end. It's like he never existed after 1982, Michael says, frustrated, staring at his laptop screen. We are back at the house, the dining table now our command center. What about his wife? I ask. Her name was Carol. Carol Hobbs. The name tastes of weak tea and polite, stilted conversations at company Christmas parties. Deceased in 1995, Michael says quietly. But they had a daughter. Sarah. Sarah Hobbs. She would be about my age. He types the name into a search engine that specializes in finding people. We wait, the silence punctuated only by the clicking of keys and the hum of the refrigerator. And then, a result. Sarah Hobbs. No, the name has changed. Sarah Connolly. Living in Bridgeport, less than 30 miles away. Not Arizona. Not living a quiet, prosperous life. Bridgeport is a hard town, a place people go when their luck has run out. Michael writes down the address. He looks at me, his eyes dark with a dawning, terrible understanding. The story he had been told his entire life, the foundational myth of his father's success, was beginning to feel like a crime scene. I'll go alone, he says. No, I reply, standing up. We'll go together. This started with our family. It's time we faced what it's built on. I go to the hall closet and retrieve my coat. It's a simple, elegant trench coat, the kind of thing I've worn for years. But as I put it on, it feels different. It feels like armor. We are no longer just digging through paper. We are about to start digging up graves. Bridgeport is the unkempt backyard of Fairfield County. The manicured lawns and stately colonial homes of our world give way to cracked pavement, chain-link fences, and rows of tired-looking duplexes. It is a place stripped of illusions. The address leads us to a small, gray house with peeling paint and a sagging front porch. A few sad-looking plastic toys are scattered on a patch of brown grass. It's the kind of house you drive past without a second glance. The kind of house that holds onto its secrets tightly. Michael hesitates on the sidewalk, looking from the house to me, a silent question in his eyes. Are you sure about this? I nod, and we walk up the crumbling concrete path. I ring the bell. After a long moment, the door opens a few inches, held by a brass chain. A woman's face appears in the gap. She is around Michael's age, with faded blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and deep lines of weariness etched around her eyes. But the eyes themselves, they are her father's. The same kind, intelligent, slightly haunted eyes of Arthur Hobbs. Yes, she asks, her voice wary. Are you Sarah Connolly? I ask gently. Formerly Sarah Hobbs? The name hangs in the air. Her eyes narrow with suspicion. Who's asking? My name is Eleanor Vance, I say. And this is my son, Michael. My husband was Richard Vance. He was your father's business partner. The recognition that dawns on her face is not a pleasant one. It's a curdled mixture of old anger and fresh pain. For a moment, I think she will slam the door. Instead, with a sigh that seems to carry the weight of decades, she unlatches the chain. Vance, she says, the name an epithet. I wondered if you'd ever show up. Come in. I suppose you might as well. The inside of the house is cluttered but clean. It smells of bleach and microwaved popcorn. We sit on a lumpy sofa while Sarah perches on the edge of an armchair, her arms wrapped around herself as if warding off a chill. So, she begins, her gaze fixed on Michael. After 40 years, the Vances are on my doorstep. What's the occasion? Did Richard finally grow a conscience? Or did he just run out of people to screw over? My father is in trouble, Michael says, choosing his words carefully. We've been looking into his finances, into the history of his company. We found the sale agreement for the West End project. For your father's share. Sarah lets out a sound that is half laugh, half sob. The sale agreement. You mean the piece of paper your father forged after he destroyed mine? The word hangs in the small, stuffy room. Forged. My father wouldn't have sold his share, Sarah says, her voice gaining strength, fueled by a long-banked fire of injustice. Not for $10,000, not for $10 million. The West End project was his baby. He poured his life into it. He was the one who saw the potential in that wasteland. Richard was just the mouthpiece. She gets up and walks over to a small, dusty bookshelf. From behind a row of paperbacks, she pulls out a worn leather folio. She brings it back and lays it on the coffee table between us. My father was meticulous, she says, her voice thick with a daughter's pride. He kept a private journal. A log of every meeting, every calculation, every conversation. After he died, my mother gave this to me. She told me to keep it safe. She said one day the world might be ready for the truth. She opens the folio. The pages are filled with her father's neat, precise handwriting and technical drawings. She flips to the last few entries. It's all in here, she says. The soil contamination. It was worse than he thought. He discovered the old tanneries had been dumping chromium-6, a carcinogen, for decades. The cleanup would have cost millions. It would have delayed the project for years, maybe killed it entirely. He told Richard they had a legal and moral obligation to report it. Her finger traces the script. Richard refused. He told my father they would just bury it. Literally. Build on top of it and not tell a soul. My dad said he would go to the EPA, to the press, whatever it took. That was their last conversation. She looks up, her eyes locking onto mine. 2 days later, my father was dead. The air leaves my lungs. I knew we were digging up something ugly, but I had imagined fraud, theft, blackmail. Not this. The official report said it was a suicide, Michael says, his voice strained. My father was not a man who would take his own life, Sarah says with absolute certainty. He was stressed, yes. He was terrified of your father. Richard had threatened him. He told him he would ruin him, that he would fabricate a story about my dad embezzling funds, that he would make sure he never worked again. My dad was scared, but he wasn't suicidal. He loved my mother. He loved me. She takes a shaky breath. The night he died, he was supposed to meet Richard at the construction site to talk. He never came home. They found his car at the bottom of the quarry by the river the next morning. The police said he must have lost control. They found a note in his office. A typed note. My father never typed anything personal in his life. He wrote everything by hand. But the police didn't care. Richard Vance was already a big man in town. He had friends. He sold them a story about his partner being depressed and overwhelmed, and they bought it. It was easier that way. My mind reels, trying to connect the dots. The forged signature, notarized by Richard's crony lawyer. The fraudulent environmental report. The sudden, convenient death of the one man who stood in the way. It's a perfect, hideous crime. My entire life, the beautiful house, my son's expensive education, the charitable donations, the veneer of respectability, it was all built on top of a buried toxic secret. It was all fertilized with the blood of a good man. I look at Sarah, at this woman who has lived her entire life in the shadow of this injustice, struggling in a gray little house in Bridgeport while my family flourished. The guilt is a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. I am so sorry, I whisper. The words are pathetic, inadequate. They are pebbles thrown against a mountain of grief. Sarah just shakes her head. Sorry doesn't change anything, Mrs. Vance. What are you going to do about it? As we drive home in silence, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink, I feel a shift inside me. The personal war of a scorned wife has become something more. This is no longer about my humiliation or my lost fortune. It's about a man named Arthur Hobbs. It's about justice, 40 years delayed. Back in my perfect, silent house, I walk to the phone. I pick up the receiver and dial the number for the county police department. When the dispatcher answers, my voice is clear and steady. I'd like to speak with Detective Miller, I say. Tell him Eleanor Vance has some new information about a very old crime. Richard comes home. The hospital discharges him a day after my call to Detective Miller. He arrives in a taxi, unannounced. I'm in the garden, pruning the climbing roses on the trellis, when I hear the car door slam. I turn, and there he is, standing at the edge of the flagstone patio. He looks diminished. The robust, confident man who commanded every room he entered is gone. In his place is a stooped, tired old man with angry red blotches still visible on his neck and the backs of his hands. He carries his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his tie loosened. He looks like a salesman who has just lost the biggest deal of his life. For a long moment, we just stare at each other across the manicured lawn. The space between us is a 50-year chasm filled with unspoken truths and unforgivable lies. The scent of the roses is thick in the air, a sweet, cloying perfume for a funeral. "Eleanor," he says, his voice raspy. I don't reply. I clip a dead rose blossom from its stem with a sharp, satisfying snip of my shears. He takes a few steps toward me, his movements uncertain. "We need to talk." "I believe we are past the point of talking, Richard," I say, not looking at him. I focus on the task at hand, on the clean, precise cuts. He tries the old tactic first. Charm. The same weapon he has wielded with devastating effect for half a century. He softens his voice, attempts a weary, self-deprecating smile. "All right," he sighs. "I deserved it. I deserved all of it. I was a fool, Eleanor. A stupid, arrogant old fool. I betrayed you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm here to try and make things right. It's a good performance. Full of practiced contrition." For a horrifying second, I can almost feel the old instinct kicking in, the urge to smooth things over, to accept the apology, to restore the peace. But then I see Arthur Hobbs's kind eyes in his daughter's face. I feel the weight of the foreclosure notice in my hand. The performance is no longer convincing. I can see all the strings. Make things right? I finally turn to face him, my shears held loosely at my side. "Are you going to bring Arthur Hobbs back from the dead, Richard? Are you going to unforge the documents? Are you going to give Sarah back the life you stole from her?" The blood drains from his face. His carefully constructed mask of remorse shatters, revealing the raw panic beneath. He had expected a fight about Brenda, about the money. He was not prepared for this. He was not prepared for me to know his original sin. "What are you talking about?" he stammers. That was an accident. A tragedy. Michael and I visited Sarah Hobbs," I say, my voice as cold and sharp as the blade in my hand. "We saw his journals. We know about the soil contamination. We know about the threats. We know you killed him." He takes a step back, as if I'd physically struck him. "That's a lie. A hysterical, ridiculous lie. You're talking to a bitter woman who wants someone to blame for her pathetic life. The charm is gone. Now comes the pressure, the aggression." He moves closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. "You and Michael need to stop this. You are playing with things you don't understand. You will destroy this family. You will destroy Michael's career. My career. Everything. You destroyed this family, Richard," I state, unflinching. "You destroyed it 40 years ago when you chose money over a man's life. We've just been living in the ruins, pretending it was a palace." He sees that the threats aren't working. He sees the woman in front of him is not the pliable, predictable Eleanor he married. Panic gives way to a final, desperate gambit, the confession, twisted into a grotesque justification. His face contorts, a storm of fury and self-pity. "All right. Yes. You want to know? I'll tell you. Arthur was a coward. A weak, sniveling coward who was going to sink us all. He was going to go to the EPA and bury us in years of lawsuits and cleanup costs. We would have lost everything. Our house, our savings, everything we had worked for." He's pacing now, his hands slicing through the air. "I made a choice. I chose us. I chose you. I chose Michael. That life you loved so much, this house, this garden, the trips to Europe, the private schools, all of it was bought and paid for that night at the quarry. I did it for you. I gave you everything. The raw, naked monstrosity of his words washes over me. He isn't confessing with remorse. He's confessing with pride. He sees himself not as a murderer, but as a patriarch making a hard sacrifice for the good of his tribe. He truly believes his own lie. He believes he is the hero of this story. In that moment, any lingering trace of the man I thought I loved, any ghost of the 50 years we shared, evaporates. I am looking at a stranger. A monster who has worn my husband's face for 5 decades. You gave me nothing, Richard, I say, my voice barely a whisper, but it cuts through his tirade like a surgeon's scalpel. You gave me a beautiful cage built on a poisoned foundation. And you called it a gift. He stops pacing. He stares at me, his chest heaving. He finally understands. He has lost. He has no more moves to make, no more masks to wear. He is exposed, utterly and completely, in the perfect afternoon light of the garden he paid for with a man's blood. The silence stretches between us, broken only by the buzzing of a bee among the lavender. I spoke to Detective Miller, I say. He's reopening the investigation into Arthur Hobbs's death. He has the journals. He'll be talking to Sarah. He'll be talking to you. The fight goes out of him. His shoulders slump. The vibrant, powerful man is finally, truly, gone. All that's left is a hollowed-out old man, staring at the wreckage of a life he built on a lie, facing a woman who will no longer be silent. The house is scheduled for auction in 3 days. The air inside is thick with the finality of it all, a sense of an era ending. I decide to cook one last meal. Not a feast, not a celebration, but a ritual. A formal, proper farewell to the life I once knew. I spend the afternoon preparing. I polish the family silver, the heavy, ornate forks and knives that have been in Richard's family for generations. I use the best china, the plates with the delicate gold rims that we only ever used for Christmas and anniversaries. I open a bottle of the expensive French wine Richard had been saving, a Chateau Margaux that costs more than my first wedding ring. I set 3 places at the long mahogany dining table. 1 for me, 1 for Michael, and 1 for Richard. Michael arrives first. He looks exhausted, the past week having carved new lines into his face. He sees the table, the candles, the perfect settings, and a look of apprehension crosses his features. Mother, what is this? It's dinner, Michael, I say simply. Sit down. Richard comes down the stairs a few minutes later. He moves like a man in a trance, an automaton going through the motions. He has not spoken a word to me since our confrontation in the garden. He simply exists in the house, a ghost haunting the rooms he is about to lose. He sees the table and pauses, but then, with a sort of weary resignation, he takes his seat at the head of the table, the place he has occupied for 50 years. I bring the food from the kitchen. A simple roast chicken, potatoes, asparagus. The meal is silent. The only sounds are the clinking of silver against china and the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. It is the most honest meal we have shared in decades. There are no pleasantries to offer, no small talk to hide behind. We are just 3 people at the end of a long, ruinous road. After we have finished, I do not clear the plates. I fold my hands on the table and look at Richard. His eyes are fixed on his plate, on the remnants of his meal. Detective Miller was here this afternoon, I say, my voice calm and even. It doesn't carry anger, only the weight of an unalterable fact. He had a warrant. He took the old files from your office. The ones pertaining to the West End project. Richard doesn't move. Michael puts his fork down, his gaze shifting between me and his father. He also had a copy of Arthur's journal, I continue. He said the discrepancies between the journal entries and the official timeline of events are significant. He asked me about Walter Sidlow, your old lawyer. He's looking for Sidlow's secretary. Apparently, she's still alive, living in a retirement home in Florida. I let the words settle in the quiet room. Each sentence is a stone, methodically placed, building a wall from which there is no escape. Sarah Connolly has agreed to give a formal statement. She is also filing a civil suit for wrongful death. A lawyer from a pro bono firm in New York took her case. It will be in the papers tomorrow. Finally, Richard looks up. His eyes are hollow. The king is dethroned, sitting at the head of an empty table in a conquered castle. "What do you want, Eleanor?" he whispers, his voice a dry rasp. This is the question. The one his entire life has been built around. What does a person want? Money, power, respect. He had taken all those things. But he doesn't understand what I want. I want the truth to have its day, I say. I want Arthur Hobbs to have a name that isn't attached to a lie. I want his daughter to have peace. I lean forward slightly. And I want you to have a choice. He stares at me, uncomprehending. Detective Miller will be here in 10 minutes, I say, glancing at the clock on the mantelpiece. I called him before you came downstairs. When he rings that bell, you have a choice, Richard. It might be the first real one you've made in 40 years. You can walk to the door, meet him like a man, and confess to what you did. You can take responsibility, for once in your life. Or, you can sit here and wait for him to walk in, and I will tell him everything I know. The choice is yours. Michael looks at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and a dawning, profound respect. He finally sees me. Not as a mother, not as a victim, but as the architect of this final, terrible justice. Richard looks from me to his son, and back again. He is searching for an escape route, a loophole, a clever turn of phrase that will get him out of this. But there is none. The room is a courtroom, and I am the judge, jury, and star witness all in one. He pushes his chair back. The sound of the wood scraping against the floor is unnaturally loud. He stands up slowly, his joints creaking. He looks around the dining room, at the paintings, the silver, the wallpaper he chose 3 decades ago. He is saying goodbye. Without a word, he turns and walks out of the room. We hear his footsteps in the hall, the sound of the front door opening, and then the quiet murmur of voices outside. A moment later, the doorbell rings. I don't get up to answer it. There is no need. Packing is an act of archaeology. You excavate the layers of a life, unearthing forgotten artifacts and deciding what is worth saving and what must be left to the dust. The house, stripped of its soul, is now just a collection of objects in boxes. Michael stayed. He extended his leave from work, and for a week, we work side by side in the quiet, echoing rooms. We are not just packing up a house, we are dismantling a myth. In the attic, we find a box of my old things. College textbooks, letters I wrote to my parents, a pressed gardenia from my wedding bouquet, now brown and fragile as a butterfly's wing. Michael picks up a small, leather-bound book. My college poetry journal. He opens it and reads a line aloud. To live deliberately, he reads, then looks at me. I didn't know you wrote poetry. I didn't, really, I say, taking the book from him. I just copied down the words of people who were braver than I was. That's thorough. Did you want to be a writer? He asks. There is no judgment in his voice, only genuine curiosity. He is learning me, piece by piece. I wanted to be a botanist, I confess. The word feels strange in my mouth. I was accepted into a graduate program at Cornell. But then I met your father. He had grand plans. My plans seemed very small in comparison. He talked you out of it, Michael states. It is not a question. No, I say, and this is important. This is my truth. He didn't have to. I talked myself out of it. I chose the beautiful garden, Michael. I just didn't realize it came with a gilded cage. We don't burn the photo albums, as some might. We pack them. The images of Richard, smiling at birthday parties, carving Thanksgiving turkeys, holding a tiny Michael in his arms, they are part of the story. They are a record of the lie, and the lie is as much a part of our history as the truth we now know. To erase him completely would be another kind of falsehood. One afternoon, Michael finds the old financial ledgers from the West End project, the ones the police didn't take. He sees the meticulous entries in Arthur Hobbs's hand, and then the abrupt shift to Richard's confident scrawl. He sees the $10,000 payment, a single line item that rewrote all of our lives. All this time, he says, his voice thick with a quiet rage, I thought he was a genius. A titan. I tried so hard to live up to him. To earn his respect. He looks at me, his eyes filled with a pain that is 45 years in the making. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I never saw you. I was so busy looking at the monument, I didn't see the woman standing in its shadow. You saw what he wanted you to see, I say, placing a hand on his arm. We all did. I was the one standing in the shadow, Michael, but I was also the one who tended it. I have my own accounts to settle. In that moment, a chasm of misunderstanding closes between us. He is no longer the angry son, and I am no longer the passive mother. We are two adults, surveying the wreckage of our shared past and finding, in the rubble, a foundation for something new. Something real. On the last day, the house is empty. The rooms feel vast and anonymous. The movers have taken the boxes destined for my new, smaller home and Michael's apartment in Chicago. All that's left are the ghosts and the indentations in the carpet where the furniture used to be. We stand in the foyer for the last time. Are you going to be okay? He asks. It is the question I have been dreading, and the one I am finally ready to answer. Michael, I say, looking around at the vacant space. I am not the porcelain doll your father thought I was. Porcelain breaks. I'm more like terracotta. A simple clay pot. I've been cracked, yes. But that's just how the light gets in. I'm going to be more than okay. He smiles, a real, genuine smile. He leans in and kisses my cheek. Call me when you get to the new place, he says. I will. I hand him the keys. He will be the one to give them to the real estate agent. I do not want to be the one to surrender the house. I am not surrendering. I am being liberated. I walk out the front door and I do not look back. 6 months pass. The seasons turn. My new home is a small cottage, a rental, with a patch of unruly land out back that the previous tenants had neglected. It is perfect. The trial was a quiet affair, as these things often are. Faced with the evidence, with the testimony of Sidlow's former secretary, and with my own unwavering statement, Richard pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter. The murder charge was too hard to prove after 40 years. He will likely spend the rest of his life in a low-security prison, a final, drab chapter in a life that was all about appearances. The civil suit awarded Sarah Connolly a sum of money that can never compensate for her loss, but it is a form of acknowledgement. A form of justice. Michael calls every Sunday. We talk about his work, about the books I'm reading, about the stubborn patch of clay soil I'm trying to amend in the backyard. Our conversations are easy, unburdened by the weight of unspoken things. He is getting to know his mother. I am getting to know my son. Today, the sun is warm on my back. I am on my knees in the dirt, my hands covered in rich, dark soil. The garden is a mess, but it is my mess. It is a blank canvas. I am not trying to replicate the perfect, orderly garden of my former life. That was a showpiece. This is a workspace. I dig a hole and gently place a young rose bush into the earth. It's a hardy, heirloom variety, one known for its resilience and its thorns. They say you can't transplant old trees. That the shock is too great, that their roots are too set in their ways. But I'm not a tree. I am a gardener. I know that sometimes, for something new to grow, you have to be willing to tear out the old roots, even if it hurts. You have to cut away the dead wood, amend the soil, and have faith in the seeds you plant. I press the soil down firmly around the base of the rose bush and give it a long, deep drink of water. My hands are dirty, my knees ache, and a bead of sweat trickles down my temple. I look at the small, burgeoning garden, at the promise of what it will become. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I feel a profound and quiet sense of peace. I am no longer living in Richard's garden. I am finally cultivating my own.